I was wondering if you would talk about, since this was your first studio film and your Hollywood studio and first film in English, how you came to the story of Charles for your first film.
Mm-hmm. No, first, after I made my first movie, Sleeping Caramelos, later on for another movie I made called Z, which was a success in the United States, I received a lot of scripts. And no one of those scripts was interesting to me. Up until the day, many years later, I received a script with a book. It was the book on Charles Horman case, and the script was made after the book. So I read both, and I called the producer. No, I called my agent first, and then the producer. I said the only part of the book, the script is not something I like, but in the book there is 70 or 80 last pages, the story of the father looking for his son, which interests me. If the production agrees to work on that, I will like to work. And so the producer, Eddie Lewis, called me, and he said, okay, come to New York and we discuss about that. I came to New York, I went to New York and discussed, and he said, okay, let's sign. I said, no, I won't sign this. I will do a first draft of 50, 60 pages, and if you like it, then we sign. He was a bit surprised, but then he accepted, and so we did. I sent the script, the draft, 60 pages, and then I came. They liked it, and we find a scriptwriter, Donald Stewart, because my English, as you can understand, it was not so good, and especially to write dialogues and so forth. And then we worked together and did the script, and we did the movie.
And you won the Academy Award for the Best Adapted.
For this adapted story, that's right.
Best Adapted Screenplay. Also, you filmed State of Siege in Chile, but by the time you did Missing, you couldn't film in Chile.
Right.
And you shot in Mexico. And I wondered if you could talk about, there's some great stories on the DVD about working in Mexico using real soldiers and the story of the tanks that we see in the movie.
As you see, we need tanks in a moment. And so the production said, okay, or the Mexicans say, we cannot give you tanks, our tanks. So the production said, okay, we send your 2 tanks from Hollywood. When the tanks arrived in the frontier, the people in the frontier say, tanks, American tanks in Mexico with the occupation, no way to let them in. So it was 4 or 5 days before the shooting of the scenes. So I have a meeting with the studio, and the people of Mexico say, if you agree, we can make tanks. I said, we don't have so much time. Say, we can make them if you agree, but let us do it and show us how you want to shot them. I said, I want to shoot them from far away, as you can see. Say, okay, then you can make them. And if we shot them, he did it perfectly right. They are almost real. But if you go to do a reverse shot from the other side, you see young Mexicans bringing the tank to make the move. That's one story. Another one is we are shooting in Acapulco. In Acapulco, every day around 11 o'clock, there was rain. So we have to stop, go for lunch, and then one tank was put in a bad position in a corner. So a guy coming with the car, he get into the tank, his car get into the tank up until the driver. So the guy came out, he was looking around like crazy, so he pulled back, he ran away. Because they were tanks from wood, from HE wood, yes.
And the soldiers were all...
The soldiers, we asked to the Mexican militaries to give real soldiers, because, you know, the extras, to have really soldiers with extras are always fake. They don't know how to bring the guns, they don't know how to wear the uniforms and so forth. So we have really extras. They were very happy to be with us because they They were very well fed, very well treated, and they were doing movies, and they would like to see themselves. They have pictures. And I don't know what happened with payment, because the general said, no, we don't pay them. You give us to pay to the money, and we give them after the money. And I think they will never be paid.
Also, this is the first score that DeAngelis did after Chariots of Fire.
That's right, yes.
How did you work with DeAngelis on this movie in scoring it?
I generally, when I write the script, I listen to musics, different musics, and I like very much DeAngelis, which is also, it's Greek, and so we have met before. And I like his music. I think I did something very, very, I always do during the editing. This time I did it during the dailies. For the last scene, when they go away, I put the music from DeAngelis. And when the people from Universal heard it, they said, that's great. But it was the music belonged to another movie DeAngelis have done. It was a big tragedy because he has to change it to do another music. But it was, I like to work very much with the musician. I don't play piano. I cannot give him notes or directions, but I will listen together music I like, just for the sound, just for the rhythm, and then he makes some tests, and he shows me things, and then he ends up by doing the music, of course. Yes, but I generally what we used to do in Europe, and particularly in France, it's to edit the movie, to give to the musician, and he does the music just. But since my generation, started working really with the musician, as we do, for example, with DP or with the editor, because we're editing the movie. I don't know. Some people say so. The editing of the movie is done by. I think the editing of the movie has to be done by the director and the editor, because finally the editing is what? It's the last writing of the movie, and we cannot let it to some other person to do it. And then I think the director has to be there all the time, unless it's my position.
When you did Z, did you have the music in mind before the movie?
In a certain way, yes. Yes, but the musician, we didn't have the musician. For Z, the musician, he was in jail in Greece. So I have just a connection with him. Someone went to see him, and he sent me a word saying, use the parts of the music you like for the movie. And so we have adapted music already done from him since several years. And we adapted for the movie.
I wondered if also you would talk about the casting of the movie. Jack Lemmon is so perfect and really carries the film, his journey.
No, Jack Lemmon was, we have a problem with Jack Lemmon, because when we have a meeting for the casting at the Universal, they said, who you believe could be the good actor for? I said, Jack Lemmon. They said, Jack Lemmon? Everybody was very surprised. And I said, someone said, is there something funny in that movie? I said, no, but have you seen Save the Tiger? It's a good movie. If you have not seen it, you have to see it. It's a great movie with Jack Lemmon. I say and also the Apartment.
Yeah.
The Apartment, also for me, it's not a comedy, it's a tragedy. Yeah. But anyway, there was a big fight because they were proposing me to other actors like Gene Hackman, for example, who's a great actor, or Ed Asner. And so I said, if Gene Hackman goes to the embassy, and he sees the ambassador, and he knows that the ambassador is lying, he will punch him, he will jump on him. Jack Lemmon is not the kind of guy. So finally, thanks to Eddie Lewis, the producer, I insisted on him, and he said, okay, let's have Jack Lemmon. And I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And Sissy Spacek.
He was a great actor. He was an extraordinary relationship with him during the shooting and during all the period of the work we had. And of course, Cici, she is a great actress. She's still there, and some others.
And she works so well with him.
Yes, perfect, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. We had a problem. It's just a small, to see how Jack was an extraordinary actor. Had a problem because Cici never get her marks when we were shooting, you know, to the right position. And I had my cameraman, the camera operator, he was very nervous. And Jack, I understood immediately, the second day, he came to me, he said, "Cici, you have a problem with Cici?" He does. I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't worry, I fixed that." And every time Cici was that long from her marks, Jack was changing his marks, and he took the right position. It was amazing to see. It's really ballet.
That's incredible. And the cinematographer, I mean, it's, to me, very unusual that a Hollywood studio would let you have your French crew do the movie. Because usually they, you know, have Americans added on.
Yes, I have done 5 movies in the United States. And from this movie on, the conditions were, I would like my French crew. French crew, it means 4 persons: the editor, the DP, and the sound. And say if not, so they accepted for all my movies. And I did also the post-production in Paris. For one simple reason, a friend director told me that every weekend we're doing this, we're editing here, the executives come to the editing room during the weekend, during the Sunday, say, "Show us something." And so you are obliged to show them something. And then after a while they can tell you, why we don't do this, we should change this and that, so forth. And he says this is a pain because after you shoot you edit for weeks and months, and after a while you are fed up with them, and it's better not to be not to have them. So I said, okay, we do it, and everybody accepted. So I did all my movies, the Hollywood movies I have done in Paris, the whole post-production, the editing and the mixing and everything.
Were you surprised by the reaction, the State Department putting out the 3-page condemnation and then the lawsuit?
No, it's a political position they have, as we say at the end. So they follow the same position. I mean, they never accepted that the American government at that time knew about that. But if anything, it must be on the DVD. The New York Times, years later, in an editorial, said openly that the movie made by Costa-Gavras so far missing, it's exactly what happened. The American government knew about that, and Kissinger knew about that. They didn't do anything about it.
And it did. I mean, it did very well at the bottom. I mean, it was a
yes,
a
it did
hit.
well. Yes, it did absolutely.
And you had the screening in Washington, D.C. That must have been
I didn't have
interesting.
it. They have it. I mean, the Universal decided to do the opening of the movie in Washington, D.C., which was amazing. It's Lou Wasserman, I think he decided that at the time. And the funny thing is, it was a big theater, and of course after the screening was a kind of cocktail, and I was there in a corner. I see people coming out smiling, other people furious, getting out very quickly, and some of them going for the cocktail. It was an amazing period, yes.
Well, let's throw it open and get questions from the students. Way in the back.
Everyone bear with me for one moment. Μου λένε Σοφία και Σιβολίδου. Γεννήθηκα στην Αυστραλία, ο πατέρας μου είναι από την Ελλάδα, από ένα χωριό κοντά στην Καβάλα. Εγώ είμαι εδώ για παραγωγός και χάρηκα πολύ να σας γνωρίσω μπροστά μου. Μου άρεσε η ταινία πάρα πολύ και ήθελα να ρωτήσω, το πιο μεγαλύτερο ταινία που έχω δει από την Ελλάδα λέγεται Πολιτική κουζίνα. Δεν έχω δει άλλο τέτοιο μεγάλο. Ήθελα να ξέρω τι γίνεται στην Ελλάδα, ότι δεν φτιάχνουν τόσα μεγάλα πράγματα. The question was the biggest film I've seen.
Let's translate this, yes, because
Yeah, the question is I've seen the biggest film from Greece being a touch of spice, and I'm wondering where, the film world is at in Greece right now.
So, we have to speak about Greece or about the film?
The situation of filmmaking in Greece right now, I'm really interested.
No, the situation in Greece it's very tragic, not for everybody, for some people, for poor people, for middle class and down. And for rich people, there is no problems. All the contrary, I would say, because of that depth, that huge depth. And the reason of the depth are the bad politics in several years in every party, left, center, right, all of them. They have done insane political strategy, and they brought the country in where it is. Because if we would like to go more deeper to the explanation, there are other people who are responsible for that. The European Union, in a certain way, France and Germany, and England a little bit, who used to sell all kinds of products without asking for the money. Say, okay, we'll pay later. Money for planes, money for submarines, the Germans and everything. So not for years, without thinking how they could pay. And the moment they understood the debt was so high, so they stopped it. They say, now pay us. And of course they cannot pay them. And that's the big tragedy. So the debt is so high, I believe you have to sell all Greece to be paid. And everybody hopes that something will happen, some miracle will happen, or some people will lose money, some banks, which won't be so big problem, because banks have so much money, making so much money in the world, and to bring down the debt, and to change a little bit the situation, because young people like you, for example, there is in employment something like 40%, 35% of young people, they don't have jobs. It's insane. A lot of people leave. Young people leave to go to work in Germany, to go to I don't know, in Australia, or wherever they can go. There is one small positive thing, that the cinema is getting better, and the young people, thanks also to the digital cameras and so forth, they go around, they making films. This is a good point. Some of them, they also they were in Venice festival. They have awards, and it's kind of reborn of the Greek cinema. But of course, it's a good thing, but it's a small good thing, The big problem for people for the middle class and the lower class, it's a big problem, big problem. Some people have to cut down 30% of the salaries just to be able to work. If not, the factories or the shops, firm, close. So it's tragic. But same thing more or less happens to Portugal, a little bit in Spain also.
What makes a story important for you to tell? This is obviously such an important story, and may not have had such exposure without your film. So what when you find a story, what's important about that story for you?
For this story, for me, it was important to speak about the coup in Chile. But I did like to make a kind of documentary. There's some beautiful documentaries by Guzman and some others about the coup and so forth. What was interesting to me in that documentary was the story of the father and the son. The father who doesn't trust his son, and he trusts completely his country. And then he discovers that his son is better than he thought, and his country sometimes don't do exactly the things he was supposed to do. So this is, for me, the important thing. And also, it was a way to show also what happened during the Pinochet period, the first days of the tragedy. And this was because I have been there to make another movie called State of Siege in Chile during the Allende period. And I have discovered that everybody used to say the Allende would like to establish a communist system like in Cuba and so forth. So I have the chance to saw 3 or 4 times again to discuss with him. And he told me every time, tell everybody where you go, we don't want a communist system here. We like a freedom system, democracy, and so forth. So all those reasons why I made that movie. But generally, the movies I like to make is to speak about our society, about our world, our people who make us be happy, people or things also who make us be unhappy. In a certain way, to speak about the power. What's the power in our society? Power, all of us will have some power. It's the way we use the power. The way you use the power on the people who have around us, that can make them happy or unhappy. And then we have people above us also, they can do the same thing with their power. So this idea, this exchange of power in our society, it's one of the things that interests me as a general theme. And of course, another theme, it's also the resistance. To resist, every time to resist against the big problems, or these very small everyday problems. The stories I like to tell is that kind of stories. Or sometimes a love story. I have done a love story. I was very happy to make it with Yves Montand and Romy Schneider. It was a pleasure.
Was Romy Schneider?
Yes.
I love Romy Schneider.
Can you talk about the process of putting together such a complicated story? In that there are a lot of historical facts, and then you also have the events that happen in the characters' lives, and then trying to blend that into a narrative. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how you were able to organize the story and try to make it into something that comes together?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially when the story, it's a real story. We make a movie about a real story. The problem is for me, unless to respect I would say the ethics of the characters and of the situations. In the cinema, we can manipulate things. Sometimes we push in direction to have much more spectacle, much more show, much more excitement. And we don't respect some situations. It happens most of the time. So my principle is from let's say from Z and the other movies I have done, because they were real stories, it's to really sometimes to organize the story and the script the most ethical way, not to cheat with the situations, not to exaggerate. For example, here, could be possible to make a scene with the officials, let's say the ambassador, and the way they talk among them. We didn't do it. Every scene you see, I have people who was there, they told me this scene happened that way and that way, all the way down to the movie. Because it was important not to cheat, not to show things I haven't seen, I didn't know about them. It's the example of that movie. For example, it's the same thing for my other movies based on real stories.
Did his parents?
The parents collaborated with us, absolutely, yes. And some other people, yes.
There was a pretty striking image of a horse running through the streets. I'm wondering about the significance behind it, or the meaning, or yeah.
This is something I let it to you to decide. I would say just one thing to justify in a certain way. Since I did a lot of research about that movie, I made in Belgium one of the officers, aviation officer, important one, who was at the beginning of the coup there, and then after a while left away. And he told me that the evenings, they were extraordinary because the soldiers could do anything they want. to kill, to steal things, or to rape, whatever they would like. And sometimes let's say at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they used to come back to the barracks to eat and then to sleep. And most of them, they didn't like to sleep. They would like to go back again outside. And they had to put them some kind of special thing in the food just to oblige them to go to sleep. So this idea, it was something crazy thing, the soldiers being free to everything. So it was important to find a solution to show something like this, to give that impression.
And it's dreamlike because she opens her eyes
Yes.
and then she goes back to sleep. So it's almost as if it's her dream. I mean, it's surreal. I mean, completely surreal sequence in the film. What? Yes.
Yeah. So how you talked about the stories you like telling in terms of power and society relating to the missing, how does that translate to your film in 1988, Betrayed, where you explored like the neo-Nazi underground movement in America?
Betrayed. Oh, you know, Betrayed.
Yeah.
The Betrayed, the story of The Betrayed is like this. Irving Winkler, the producer, he was in Paris and I didn't know him. He asked to meet and to have lunch with him. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to make a story about the extreme right-wing people in France. Le Pen, I don't know if you're familiar with that people. And I think it's very difficult. I don't know from which side to take them. They are not so interesting. At the same time, they are interesting like philosophy, like ideology, philosophy, racism. He say, I would like also to do the same thing. And we discussed with Joe Esterhaus about that. Why you don't come to Los Angeles to discuss with Joe and to see what we can do? So I came. We spent time with Joe. And we traveled around the country. Went up to the Idaho, to Montana, to everywhere. We saw a lot of people. And we went also to Chicago. We saw the FBI guys, and they told us a lot of stories. So I said, okay, let's try to do it here. And Joe started writing, and we working together for a while, and then, so it's the way we have done that movie, because it was so incredibly things Joe told me at the beginning, at the first meeting we have. I said, no, this is not real. That cannot happen. And then the FBI guys told us exactly. They showed us also images, if you saw the movie, when they shot with, the face of black people, and the way they live and so forth. So we decided to do the movie. And the other thing I have decided, and Joe was, and even Winkler was in agreement with that, to have a very nice guy, who is an extremely right-wing guy, very nice. So we decided to go with Tom Berenger. For that period, Tom was like a kind of a young Paul Newman. And of course, the other side, we have Deborah Winger and so forth. And I think it was a kind of extraordinary experience to shoot the movie up there, and to meet that people. It's because in a certain way, it's amazing what happened with these particular people. They don't have any culture. They hardly know how to write and read. And they have simple ideas. They live with this kind of simple ideas. So that was the general theme with that movie, which was, for me, it was a kind of a unique experience, because I was able to go and to meet what we call the deep America.
When you work with an actor of the caliber like Jack Lemmon, would you say you give them more freedom than you normally give? Like, do you let them explore the scene and the environment more, or do you still like to give a lot of direction?
It depends on the actor. It depends. Every actor, it's a different case. With Jack, for example, it was very easy, because Jack, when the first day he came for shooting, we rehearsed the movie, we started shooting 1, 2, 3 takes. And then Jack was some kind of shy person. And shy in front, it can be bizarre, but he was doing a lot of movements and like this. So I said, I have a discussion with him. I say, Jack, just put down, do nothing, just look at the other person and do it. So he understood very quickly. Of course, we have discussed a lot about the character before, but for the small detail, everyday details, we have that kind of meeting. And after a while, Jack used to look at me and I would say, Jack, that was the direction of actor. That's what was all after a while. But we have actors who have really to explain every time, in every shot. But what I like to do, it's before the script, before the movie, before they decide to discuss with an actor, to tell him exactly how he sees it, the whole thing, and to tell me also how he sees the story. Because I think you have two kinds of actors. The actors who are there to serve the movie, and the actors who are there, the movie to serve them, to serve their character or their star, what they are, what they think they are. So I think that second kind of characters, actors are very dangerous for a director, I think. I prefer to work with the other ones who are there to accept, to serve the movie, to be the characters of the movie. But it's also, every actor has a different character, it's a different way of seeing things, of seeing the movie. And it's important to follow, for example, I don't like to during the shooting, to have a monitor, to see the monitor like this. Because in the monitor, the actor is small like this. I think I'm the old-fashioned director. It's to be next to the camera, to see the actor as I see you, and then I can see the way he will be on the screen. Because if you see in the monitor, you see the small thing. Of course, in the monitor, you can see very well the camera movements. But you are not there to see the camera movements. The camera movements, you have a cameraman who does them, and if he's okay, he does very well, you know him. So for that, I believe it's important to be there, to have that kind of relation with the actor, because also the actors feel that you are with them, and they are with you, because they have to play to someone, the actors. It's like a theater, and you are the viewer. You are the spectator, if you are there. If you are not there, they play to where? To nowhere. I was discussing the other day with a French actress, Nathalie Baye, and she just finished a movie with a director who was behind, far away from the camera in a monitor, and the camera was a small camera, like a photographer camera. And she told me I was completely lost because I was playing in front of nobody, of nothing. And she said I had a long time to get used to it because she spoke to the director, but the director said, no, I don't feel comfortable to be there. I have to be on the other side. So it's also that problem, but each one has to, and especially you have to decide when you have an actor to see what's his character. Sometimes I have a kind of simplistic explanation. Actors are like a kind of instruments. Sometimes you have a violin, you just touch it like this, and you have a nice note. And sometimes you have a drum, you have to hit the drum to have a good sound. So it's not easy. The other thing I believe is that something like 50% of the direction of an actor happens when you make the choice of the actor. Because you have to see what he has done in theater, in cinema, whatever, or to make a test eventually, even if I don't believe so much in tests. Here, everybody does tests. I don't believe it's kind of determinant to understand what the actor is, who the actor is, and if he's good or not. Because you take someone, he comes, you do 2 pages, and then say, okay, in 10 minutes we will play those 2 pages in front of the camera. So it's very difficult for a human being to get into the character to play. So I think it's unless I will never did it. I never did it. I will never do it anyway.
And you cast John Shea by going to Broadway, right?
Yeah, so I saw John in New York in the theater. I saw him in the theater. I went to see him 2 times, the same play, because us have worked in the theater when I was young, and the actors from one day to another can be different completely. So I would like to see what the difference he had. And he has done also a small thing in television, show it also. And then I discussed with John, and we went very well together.
You mentioned there being 2 different kinds of actors, those serving the movie and those being served by the movie. Have you ever found yourself in an experience where you had one of each playing together, and can you speak to how you maybe varied your directing approach for each of those actors?
Oh yes, I have it even several times. I make a movie with Armin Müller-Stahl, who's a German actor, and with
Jessica Lange.
Jessica Lange, that's right. Armin is a theater actor, great German, one of the biggest. And Armin needs a lot of rehearsals. Jessica doesn't need any rehearsal. So have 2 different persons. It was a problem, a big problem at the beginning, because Jessica, after 3 or 4 takes, she was not that good. She was perfect at the first takes. And Armin need to warm up, if I can say. So the solution we find all together, I said, okay, Armin, you play the character. Jessica doesn't play. She does what we call in French and Italian, which means just to say the words and to take the position. Which is also a problem for the other actor, because he has someone who is very cold, don't play the character. So it is a problem, and every time you have to find a solution. You see, because you are in front of situations you don't know, you discover. But finally, it went very well. I think both of them, they were great at that movie.
Growing up, did you always want to be a filmmaker?
If I wanted to be a filmmaker, you mean?
When you were growing up, what were your interests? Did you always want to be a filmmaker?
You know, when I grew up, I was living in Greece. And we used to see movies, action movies with cowboy movies at that time. We don't have the same action movies like today. With Randolph Scott. You know Randolph Scott? Have you seen some movies of Randolph Scott? Big movies. For me, the movies were done by the actors. The director didn't exist. And of course, being a more poor country like Greece, no way to believe that. The only thing I would like to do is to write. So I went to France to study at the university, literature, and then I discovered the French Cinematheque, and I discovered the movies. And the first movie I have seen was Greed. Have you seen Greed? By Eric von Stroheim, 3 hours movie. No happy end, 2 characters, a tragedy. I said, my God, this is great. Yes, because you can do other things with the movie, because it was a tragedy, like the classic tragedy in Greek theater. So I decided to go to the cinema school. Of course, I have seen other movies in the Cinematheque. And I went to the cinema school to see the director, and I was able to study the cinema school. Because I discovered that finally the movie is made by the director. It's not been made by the actor. And I liked it. I think for me, it was much more interesting than to be a writer, just writer at that time, basically. And but I think that idea of people. The people think they don't know so much about the big part of the audience is probably today, but at that time they didn't know anything about the directors. Very few people knew about the directors. I remember when I was assistant in a movie with Jean Gabin, coming back an evening, an old lady stopped Jean Gabin and said, Mr. Gabin, how you do that? All those extraordinary lines you say. She didn't know that there was 2 writers hiding for him.
It seems pretty clear from this film that you're able to change society with your films, or that you clearly maybe there's a hope to affect politics, to affect society. Do you believe that? And do you believe that that has become easier and more difficult over the years to do it in film? And also, if you could speak about doing it internationally, if that has made it easier to make political statements through film.
I think the best way to become crazy completely is to say, okay, I will do a movie to change the society. Then you're insane completely. So, you know, I make a movie, the stories I like, they touch me deeply, and I say, okay, I would like to make a movie about that, and it will happen what happens. And sometimes it happens nothing, and sometimes it happens, the miracle happens. I have a personal example. When we did the Z, for example, that movie, I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, nobody would like to make to produce that movie, to give us money, to have the casting, or the major actors have accepted to play in the movie, but no producer, no. We did all the movie because against the Greek dictatorship, and that was the reason. It was like going down the street and screaming, down with the dictators. And nobody would believe that movie would make a penny, but we have done it. We have some help from the French Center of Cinema and so forth, and nobody of us were paid. And it was a miracle happened after this. The movie went around the world everywhere. There was a big success, and people were applauding after the movie and so forth. And some people keep up until today, they say, oh, that movie changed my life and so forth. But I'm not responsible for that. I did the movie for some reasons, but not for that reason what became the movie, unfortunately. Of course, some regimes have used the cinema, like the Germans, the Nazi Germans, the Stalinists also. The German director, Leni Riefenstahl, did those extraordinary movies, but there was movies made by the Nazis just to promote the Nazi system. They were great movies, by the way, beautifully done. And they did they have changed some world, some place here and there. And for that reason, it's better to do the movies with your own feelings, the way you believe, and particularly not say, I will change the world.
About trusting the DP on set to be doing the camera stuff and focusing on the acting. I'm interested to hear what sort of conversations you do have with the DP before set and also on set, what you talk about.
With DP?
Yeah.
It's another difficult problem, like with the music. You have discussed. What I do generally, I show him either photos, either paintings. I say, we have to have in that movie, we have to have some of the scenes with more darker or much more contrast and so forth. And then we do a few tests and we get together little by little. And after a while, I used to work with the same people for several movies. Sometimes, for example, for this movie, Ricardo Aronovich, I did 3 movies with him, but then he went to Argentina to do a movie as a director, and I wasn't able to work again with him, so we stopped. Same with Raúl Coutard, for example. Raúl also, I did 2 movies with him. I would continue, but he also went to Vietnam to do he did a movie, like a director. But there was a person like Blossier, for example, I have done 6 movies with him. So you have a relationship. He understands very quickly. But the very last movie I have done, I have to change because Blossier was taken by the television for 1 year, for a serial. And I discovered an extraordinary young DP, Eric Gauthier. He's working now in the United States. He already worked with the United States, with And it was a kind of great relationship with him. The problem is to find a way to adapt yourself and to have him adapt himself to what you want. This is the most difficult thing because it's the most important collaborator. The movie, you do it with him in a certain way. I mean, the picture of the movie. Now, I would like to precise something. People say the movies are a kind of team collaborate. Yes, it is not. The movie is one man's thing. That's right. You do it. Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's a kind, it's a kind of committee. You have a committee. You say, okay, we do this. And then what you think. So, because you have 10 people in the set. Let's say 5 people very close to you. They see the movie. Each one in his way. So the movie has to be your way. If it's not your way, it's not your movie. It's everybody's movie. Whatever is good or not bad, successful, not successful. But you have the collaborators who are important to bring them and have them doing what you would like to do.
Yeah, I just, going back to David's question before and your answer in particular, and you mentioned Leni Riefenstahl as an example. She basically made propaganda films controlled by Goebbels, and those sort of, you know, the purpose of it. Do you see the film you made here, Missing, or other films made in America and Western Europe, do you see those films as being a kind of propaganda films, or should they be a kind of propaganda films for the Western civilization's way of life and way of society, or should they be, I mean, I guess the question is, do you think that those kind of films are neutral and you know, Leni Riefenstahl's films were propaganda films, or are both kinds of films propaganda films in a way?
It's what you put in the word propaganda as a meaning. I mean, of course, now when we talk about propaganda, it's what the Stalinians or the Riefenstahl they have done, because they were films controlled by the state. They were films controlled, financed by Hitler or by Stalin. And they used to do it this way, not another way. What we do, it's a personal work. It's myself with the producer and with, so we don't have any reason to make propaganda movies. They make propaganda movies to help their philosophy, to help their image and so forth. We don't do it that way. We don't do it for those reasons. We don't have the reason. We do it for sometimes for money reasons or for passion reasons we have. Okay, if you feel my passion is propaganda, okay, I say it's my movie. Myself, I do that movie that way, with some people who accept to do it like me. But it's not to promote a system. I think that's the essential difference. The other thing I was answered before when I said that aesthetically, I mean not aesthetically, but I'm trying morally to be close to the reality. The propaganda movies, they are made the way to help an idea. For me, Missing was a kind of Pinochet. What happened there, it was not democratic, because, I mean, this is the main one, the other main reason for I made that movie. But I did myself, not to help whatever other philosophy or. Essentially, this is, I mean, the different. Probably it's a too long, complex explanation, but the difference between propaganda, the state cinema or the personal cinema.
And you did the, is it
and
called
of course, in my movie, it's my ideas.
Right. But but towards the end, you know, the last scene in the airport, when, I mean, I'm not voting for any system. I'm just trying to be neutral here. But I'm just thinking it's an interesting idea.
Neutral doesn't exist.
No, but I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, towards the end, I believe in democracy and freedom, but I just sense that, and especially, sort of, the hammer on the nail towards the end when Jack Lemmon points at those officials and say, I thank God that I live in a country where we can throw people like you in jail. I mean, that's a sort of a statement. I mean, if it is propaganda, it's good propaganda because I believe in it. But the German people believed in what Hitler was doing and what Goebbels was doing in the 30s because of this way. I mean, I know that the government doesn't tell you what to do, but I mean, it's sort of a common understanding of things that we have among the people, not dictated by the government necessarily, but in the Western civilization, we have sort of a common understanding of what things should be like. And that's why we go to war, and that's why, because we want to, try and make other people see that as right way of doing things. So I'm just thinking, isn't there some kind of, not propaganda then, but some kind of
Hollywood.
Some kind of warm feeling towards.
Now, Jack Lemmon says in this.
We can throw officials
Yeah,
in jail.
but what Jack Lemmon says. Yeah, what Jack Lemmon says at the end, it's exactly what Horman said. It's his words, and what he would believe. And what would believe, I think, a lot of Americans. And probably they are right to believe that in a certain situation, they have a democracy, they can sue people and go on. Of course, after this, we say, no, the trial never took place because all kinds of reasons. So it's to you, audience, to decide, finally.
And you also, the confession is very much an attack on the communist system, on the show trials with Yves Montand.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's looking at the other side and seeing what can go wrong with that type of government.
Yeah, because they are authoritarian governments, they are fascistic governments completely. They decided, like in our democracies, they control the army, they control the police, they control the justice. They do exactly. They obey them completely.
Was it Czechoslovakia?
It was Czechoslovakia, yes. Yeah.
You should see.
But the Americans don't see, so they don't know that it's a movie about the trial, the Stalinian trials. And the funny thing, when the movie was shown in New York, people shown in America didn't understand that how much the communists at that time were like believers to the party. They could sacrifice themselves to save the party. Not to sacrifice themselves against an enemy, but to sacrifice themselves inside the party. It was very complex. So, yes, the idea of propaganda, at the beginning propaganda was a good word, but since Hitler and Goebbels, who was the minister of propaganda precisely, used it, the world, of course, became completely different.
One last question.
I think it was two or 3 weeks ago that it was the anniversary of the coup in Chile, and I just by accident started to just do some research about that condition, and I feel like it was much more violence and very intense in that period. Do you deliberately didn't show the violence that much and just concentrated on the story and this father and son thing, or you thought that this is how the condition was? Because I really to look at the pictures and just research, and I started reading some poems of Pablo Neruda and these things, and I feel like it was very, very intense. But I didn't get that intensity from this movie. Did you do it deliberately or not?
The question is,
The violence, that
Yes.
the Pinochet regime was, at this time period, much more violent, and he felt you didn't emphasize, right?
No, you're right. You're right. Because why? Because I decided to stay around the characters, not to go to show people things my characters haven't seen. So, for that, the scene of the evening, because she was there, she has to cross the city during the evening, and she saw what she saw. I could do scenes where they're killing people here or there, torturing people, but no one of our characters have seen them. So the idea of violence was just the way my characters felt that violence. I would be out of the of the project of my story, if I have done it. Yeah, and then could become propaganda.